For the first time since the 2007-2008 season, Duke basketball is 10-0 to open up ACC play. And oh yeah, they get NC State back after a couple of tough losses against the Wolfpack last season.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us on the show with us today, Tuesday, January 28th, 2025, as Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. And today we got to focus on the Duke win last night over NC State. Such a quick turnaround for Duke after playing on Saturday in Winston-Salem against Wake Forest. We saw a good game between the Blue Devils and the Wolfpack last night, with Duke walking away with a 10-point victory by a final score of 74-64. Our pal Ben McCormick from Duke Wisdom is on the show with us today to break it all down. What was good? What was bad? What can we improve on as Duke now gets set for a big one on Saturday inside Cameron Indoor against their arch rival, the North Carolina Tar Heels. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Also, take a moment to watch us each and every day on YouTube. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support for us over at YouTube means so much, and really excited to see the show continue to grow. So Ben McCormick's here with us. We're talking about the win for the Blue Devils last night over NC State. What a crazy game it was for Duke. They find themselves in a hole, one of their toughest and the largest deficits that they've seen all season long. At one point, they trailed 35-22, a 13-point deficit. Duke trailed by 14 earlier in the year against Louisville. That was the worst, but nearly was in the toughest hole that they've had all season long, and they've got to make a mad dash to get back out in front. They held NC State scoreless for over 8 minutes of game action to get that second half started, and then give credit to NC State, Ben. They just wouldn't go away, and this one, Duke had to kind of win it out real gritty down the stretch.
Man, I wasn't sure if I was looking at the NC State Wolfpack or the 2015-16 Warriors. That was crazy. They had dudes that I knew good and well weren't shooting well this entire season, that were just drilling everything. And it's difficult to deal with games like that, right? But I think time and time again we discuss the fact that Cooper Flagg does literally whatever is necessary to win basketball games. He's one of the most impressive players that I've ever seen in college basketball, and today is one of the most shining examples of that, I think. Yeah,
he was sensational. Every single way you look at it, when Duke needed a bucket or needed something, Cooper Flagg was able to step up and get the job done. In the first half, Duke was able to get a lot of three-point looks and makes from Knueppel. He made 3 3-pointers on the game, all of them coming there in the first half to kind of right the ship there. I thought it was an excellent game for Sion James for Duke. Pat Gamba made a couple of really key plays down the stretch. Following his first ever scoreless game with no shot attempts, Kamen Malawach came back and had a couple of nice moments throughout the game before the very end, when he had a quite unfortunate exit as he's vomiting on the floor and has to be rushed back to the locker room. You don't see that every day, Ben.
No, I hope Malawach is all right. I hope that the crazy that passed out, the student section, too, just a crazy turn of events that might have ultimately helped Duke in a weird way, because you watch the way that second half is progressing, and the offense is running almost entirely through Cooper Flagg.
Yeah.
And that dude looks beat, just utterly exhausted, but he's doing whatever he needs to do. But then, Malawach throws up, and it's like, well, that was weird. But then it takes a very long time to get back on the floor.
Yeah, shout out to those managers, man. I mean, that is the definition of other duties as assigned. I would imagine they didn't go into that game thinking, we're going to clean up vomit on the floor. And, wow. I do not envy that whatsoever.
Who knew they had that many towels?
Exactly.
Must have been 50 towels down.
No kidding. But that's a good point, though, because Flagg did look absolutely gassed down the stretch. And then, certainly thinking about the young lady in the student section there in the Cameron Crazies world, where there's a stoppage in play, so much commotion. The TV broadcast kind of follows what's going on, and she's carried off out in another kind of delay there where NC State and Duke are able to kind of catch their breath. And credit to Duke because they came out on the strong end of that after those breaks.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you mentioned Patrick earlier as well, because the play of the game for me was that play. Shot clock's running down at the end. Cooper Flagg looks like he's going to shoot it. Everybody in the stadium, everybody watching thinks that he's about to shoot it, except for him and Patrick. And he gets that tip pass right to Pat. He puts it in with 1 second to go. I mean, that's beautiful. I think say what you want about Patrick, but he has done a good job stepping up, and he did a tremendous job at the end of that one, staying steady.
Unbelievable pass from Cooper, and it was in one fluid motion that Gamba fields it and lays it up and able to beat the shot clock there as it expires. I'm also thinking about a key play in the second half where NC State's cut it to a one-possession game, and at the top of the key, Cooper Flagg makes only one three-pointer in the entire game, and it was one where he was fouled, turns into a 4-point play. Again, just when Duke needed something to be done, they turned to number 2, and Cooper Flagg delivered and just kept taking highlight play after highlight play. 28 more points added to his career scoring ledger thus far. Those averages are just going to keep going up, man. So much for a slow start offensively.
Man, if you're Janai Broome, you're just kicking walls right now, right? Because you're having one of the best seasons we've seen in college basketball.
No doubt.
And you're probably not going to win National Player of the Year because Cooper Flagg is having one of, if not the greatest freshman season in the history of the sport. And I mean, it's just unreal what he's able to do on the floor.
Yeah, he played above the rim once again, had a couple of big dunks tonight. He had one in the first half that he did not make the dunk, or maybe it was early second half, but went up with the right hand, was fouled on the play. And if that one would have gone down, that was pit level, the kind of rim attack that we saw there from Cooper Flagg. I don't know how teams stop him. I've said that over the last few weeks. He's having to stop himself by missing these shots because, you look at what NC State was able to do. They had a out-of-body experience shooting the ball to kind of keep them in this game, and yet they couldn't stop Cooper Flagg, and that ultimately was the big difference.
It seems like Kevin Keats has John Shire's number for some odd reason. I mean, I think John's 3-3 now against State in his 3 years as head coach. But ultimately, no matter how abnormal this performance was for State, there was one thing that they couldn't fix, and it was how they couldn't match up with Cooper Flagg. When you look at the defensive assignments, State either had to put a guard on him or they had to go with Ben Middlebrooks or Brandon Huntley-Hatfield, and neither of those guys are quick enough to stay with him even remotely. And so it's pick your poison. Do you want him to go over top of you? Do you want him to go around you? And there's really no in between. That's what he's going to do.
Great game all around from Cooper Flagg and several other Blue Devils who contributed to the scoring efforts for Duke to pick up a big win like this. NC State in the previous 2 games shot 5 of 34 from three-point range. They finished 7 of 11 in the first half from 3. So 7 makes in the first half, having made just 5 total in the prior 2 games. At one point, they are at 10 of 20. So 50% from 3. I mean, that's what it takes to pull off an upset like this. They covered. It was a 21.5-point spread, but that's such a big hole that they've got to make up, and it takes some of those big shooting performances to even give yourself a chance, and NC State got it, man.
State played a great game, and I think that it's similar to what Wake did this past weekend. Both teams played a good game. And as much as we have reaped Cooper's, his praises, I think that there's a little bit of a negative side to what we're seeing in the last couple, because yes, Cooper's doing well. Yes, he's bailing them out. He's winning games. He's putting the team on his shoulders. But I'm getting a little bit concerned about, what happens if that young man has an off day one time? What if it happens? Who's going to step up and be that go-to guy that you absolutely know can put up numbers? I mean, Knueppel did well today, but he's, like you mentioned earlier in the episode, he's had games where he doesn't.
Yeah.
Proctor has certainly struggled as of late. He had a good game against Boston College, but I think other than that, he's been pretty poor over the last 4 or 5 games. So that's something to think about.
No doubt about that. All right, let's dive into the box score. We'll take a look at some other individual numbers and a little bit more after we take this first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Game Time's got a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. Recently, I've used Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming game, and it was so simple and so easy. I got to recommend it to everybody. Browsing through the deals was a breeze, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The Super Deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat views before buying and that the app shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. Proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, JJ Jackson here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils with my good friend Ben McCormick. Duke Wisdom is the site and account that he runs. Duke picks up a win, 74-64 over NC State. We have those just awful memories of the meetings with NC State at the end of last year. So for a while, it felt like, oh my gosh, are they going to do this again? I mean, wow, to jump out to a 35-22 lead in the first half. Duke's able to close and cut it to just a 4-point deficit in the second half. And then they take an 8-point lead right out of the gates, a 12-0 run to get that second half started. And NC State goes over 8 minutes of basketball time. If you factor in halftime, it's like nearly an hour of real life that they're not able to score against Duke. What do you think was the biggest difference there, Ben?
Well, the defensive intensity is absolutely the difference. And I think that had to be John Shire's message to the team, because obviously they gave them some looks from three. That was part of the game plan coming out of the gate. It didn't work. And so Shire told them, you've got to get out on those shooters. You got to deny shots. And I mean, it wasn't just that State was missing shots. They were airballing shots. They were getting down to the end of shot clock. They couldn't get anything off at all. And so the defense was just absolutely stellar. They definitely had a fire lit under them during halftime.
Yeah, rightfully so. They took the coach's message to heart. As we take a look at some of the standouts here, again, Cooper Flagg with the 28 points on 8 of 17 shooting from the floor, 1 of 4 from three-point range. The free throw shot continues to improve game by game, going 11 of 13 from the line in 37 minutes. You look at Flagg, Proctor, Knueppel, and James, all those guys playing at least 33 minutes. So a game in which the bench wasn't asked to do a whole lot, Ben.
No, and it seems like that's increasingly becoming the case outside of maybe Mason Gillis. Mason Gillis has had some really big contributions lately, especially against Wake Forest. But, you know, you look at Isaiah Evans, and there's not been much there lately.
Yeah, only
Caleb
3
Foster,
minutes in the game.
Yeah, just 3 minutes. Yeah, and then Caleb Foster's been falling off steadily throughout the season, which I wish weren't the case, but
right.
It is ultimately. And so you look at the starters; they're the guys that have been carrying it. And maybe that is the little bit of a concerning thing that for Duke, increasingly as the season's progressed, they're becoming a little more top-heavy offensively than they were earlier in the year.
Look at these numbers, though. For NC State, they finished 10 of 22 from three-point range. We haven't talked about Duke three-point shooting in this game, where the Blue Devils find a way to score 74 points. Thankfully, 24 of them came from the free throw line. But Duke goes just 4 of 20 from three-point range, 20%. That matches their lowest total on the year. Against Kentucky, the Blue Devils made just 4 three-pointers. But in every other game this season, they had made at least 8. Duke just made 4 three-pointers against NC State, still found a way to win by 10. I don't see poor shooting nights like this coming along for Duke this often. They've just proven all year long to be a much better shooting team than this.
Yeah, you kind of doubt that those shooting performances are going to happen very frequently. I mean, it's possible it happens again. Obviously, it happened before against
Yeah,
Kentucky. The big difference in this one versus Kentucky is that free throw shooting. I think earlier in the year, Cooper Flagg kind of a middling free throw shooter in the
fair.
first 5 or 6 games of the season. Now you look at him, 11 of 13. You look at the team barely missing any free throws at all and almost 30 attempts. That's remarkable. I mean, I think we can't brush that under the rug in any way. Everybody says they're free throws. You got to make your free throws, but you don't usually make the free throws at that high of a rate. And that is ultimately the reason why Duke was able to win this game.
Keys to the game, we talked about NC State having one of the best turnover rates in the entire ACC. They also lead the ACC in fast break points. Duke turned the basketball over just 10 times compared to 13 for NC State. NC State and Duke both had 17 points off turnovers. And then when you look at what they were able to do getting out and run, just 10 fast break points for NC State. And the majority of those came in the first half. Meanwhile, Duke got out and ran for 25 points. Controlling the tempo and then adding in, in that second half, when you need to switch things up a little bit, Duke's able to go zone to really throw off NC State. They were just able to give them so many different looks.
Yeah, that zone's been interesting because I don't know how much they really practiced that before this game, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's not like they've had a whole lot of time to practice since the Wake Forest game. It's like, wow, this worked on Saturday night and then Sunday, and now you're back at it on Monday to play again. Yeah,
and it's working really well. And the thing that really worked well today is, especially in the second half, State wasn't getting the looks they wanted. Like you mentioned, they weren't able to push the break. They weren't able to cut through the lane like they normally like to. They have driving guards. That's the way State plays. But they weren't able to get that going today. And so even when they were hitting shots in the second half, they were sort of these desperation ISO threes by Trey Parker or something like that. And he'd hit them because he had a out-of-body experience today. But you'll live with that if you're Duke. If the best thing you're giving them is a Trey Parker contested three, you're doing a pretty good job defensively.
But between Trey Parker going 3 of 4 from 3 and knocking down some just crazy shots, Dontrez Styles going 4 of 6 from 3-point range, there were just some out-of-body compared to what the season has been, shooting performances for NC State. And they gave Duke all they could, but ultimately it results in a win for the Blue Devils over the Wolfpack. I know that you've been really high on Sion James throughout the year. Me as well, man. It's been like a slow love that has happened over the course of the season with Sion James, just because Caleb Foster means so much. Watching him last season, really hoping this guy can be a big part of the team, and he's starting the year as that lead guard. And you've got Sion James coming over from Tulane. What's it going to be like stepping up in competition and playing for Duke? I'll tell you what, man, I love the guy. I wish there was more than just the 1 year we're getting out of him. What he did last night in particular, 13 points on 5 of 8 shooting, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, played 34 minutes out there, constantly was in the passing lanes, getting steals, a great shot blocker for his size and position. I mean, he's really kind of changed what Duke can become and what Duke is able to do on the defensive end of the floor. And to have an offensive performance like that, that's just an added bonus when we've already talked about the fact Duke wasn't making shots from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, they constantly mention the fact that Duke's the biggest team in the country, but I think the real asterisk there is that they have the big guards, namely Sion James. I mean, we saw him just bodying Marcus Hill in the interior. His frame is ridiculous for a guy that's playing point guard. Point guards are RJ Davis. They're Elliot Cadeau. That's what a point guard looks like, right? The point guard doesn't look like Sion James. He's truly is actually built different. And having a guy like that with that physical advantage over other teams' guards, I mean, that's totally invaluable.
So now what Duke's got to do is they've got to build off of this as they will get set to welcome North Carolina. This game means so much to everybody each and every year, and that's certainly going to be the case once again this year. We'll preview the game coming up against the Tar Heels after we take our final timeout here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today is brought to you by our friends at Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and budget. What's my favorite part, you might ask? It's the free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site is so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Go ahead and head to wayfair.com right now. That's wayfair.com, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. It's a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, this is it. On Saturday, it's Duke and North Carolina. John Shire starts his third season, or is in his third season as the Blue Devils head coach. Duke sweeps UNC in year one. UNC sweeps Duke last year. We'll get the first installment of that game coming up this weekend. And, man, I'm looking forward to it. I think you got to feel good about the way Duke's playing as a whole this season, although now that we've seen these last two games play out the way they did against other in-state teams in Wake Forest and NC State, maybe there's a little bit more reservation going into this game. Ben, I don't know how to feel about this one now. I'm conflicted.
Yeah, I don't love the way they've been playing. I mean, I love the way that they pulled it out, but you don't ever want to be heading into the Carolina game having played your two most contested games.
Yeah.
It doesn't bode well. Like on paper, Duke should beat Carolina pretty handily. But in reality, we know that this game, anything goes. And not only that, Carolina has played a lot of good teams this season, and they've hung with all of them. Like, they don't get blown out.
Yeah.
You say what you will about Carolina. They've lost to Stanford. You know, we love Jalen Blakes for gaming them, but they've lost other games that they shouldn't have lost. They played close games that they shouldn't have been close with, Boston College, namely.
Yep.
But they've been within a shot of beating Kansas, within a shot of beating Michigan State, competitive with Auburn for stretches of the game. And I mean, there's something to be said about that. On paper, Duke wins this game 10 times out of 10, but in reality, I know that's not how it works. And so who knows what's going to happen on Saturday.
Carolina in action tonight, taking on Pitt. The Tar Heels right now currently have a 13-8 overall record. I don't often come after mascots, Ben, but I'm going to do this for a moment right here. A little frustrated last night. The Blue Devils headband in the first half stated UNC warm-up, which just wasn't working that well, right? That we're looking ahead to the Tar Heels instead of NC State. And then in the second half, he changes it to pack up, which is very creative, pack up and go home. But the fact that we're already kind of making this a UNC warm-up game and not focusing on NC State, like, that's disastrous. That could have been awful if NC State would have found a way to come up with a win like that. And here I am trying to call out the mascot because I'm all for making sure the vibes are good all the way around going into a game like this.
That would have been a bad look, man. That would have been a really bad look for the Blue Devil. I'm surprised, that we're viewing this as a warm-up game. If anybody is, I mean, this is the team that beat Duke in the Elite Eight and in the ACC tournament. I mean, come on, man. Tyrese Proctor was talking about this was a personal game. This was one he was looking forward to. I mean, he didn't really play like he was looking forward to it that much, but I think there were people that really wanted to get this game back. And so I hate that if it did fall into the category of, oh, we're going to beat them, they're not that good, and we're looking forward to Carolina. I really hope that none of the players were thinking that way at the very least, but shame on the Blue Devil.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so College Game Day is going to be there. It's number 2 Duke. It's an unranked North Carolina team. It's 6:30 p.m. Eastern. All eyes are going to be watching a game like this. Everyone wants to see what Duke can do if they can continue this undefeated run in league play thus far. And beyond that, here's Cooper Flagg with an opportunity to kind of leave your mark. When you think of all the great players that have come through Duke University and played for this program, so often one of the first things that you likely think of is a play or a game or a moment that they had against the Tar Heels. And I'm probably the most fired up for that, right? Like, I'm so excited to see what Cooper Flagg's installment in this greatest rivalry in college athletics looks like.
Yeah, that's going to be really exciting to see what he can do there. And he's going to be, once again, the key to this game. Keep him on the floor for as long as possible, keep him out of foul trouble, and see what he can do.
He's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this all comes together. I'm excited for the conversations that we're going to have in the days to come, getting folks set for this game coming up against North Carolina. And Ben, I know you're in that same boat. I know that you've got a lot going on in the Duke Wisdom world. Tell us about your work and how people can support you and what they could be on the lookout for as they get set for the game coming up against UNC.
Yeah, man. DukeWisdom.org. You can find articles, podcasts, and everything like that. Clinton and I are going to be hitting the mics later tonight, and we're going to be talking some Carolina preview and unboxing the last few games as well. So you can check out the Duke Wisdom podcast, perspective of two Carolina graduates who run a Duke podcast.
So much intrigue, man. It's a great listen. We'll have to check that out. That's awesome. Well, thank you for the time today, Ben. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, that's Ben McCormick. He runs Duke Wisdom. I always love the conversations that we're able to have, talking all things Duke basketball. Thank goodness Duke won the game last night over NC State. Again, 10-0 now in the ACC, 18-2 overall on the season. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.